Spectator. To say I watched him through the keyhole, to say I pressed my face to the door and watched, to say I had what one could call a crush, to say the crush was superficial, to say the crush was on the superficial, like his ribcage through his shirt, like the books he read, and he was brilliant. To say I was not brilliant, though one day I would be. To say one day I would know my brilliance. To say one day the world would know my brilliance, and I would know that day my brilliance made no difference. And I would know that day no brilliance made a difference. But first, I was mistaken. First, I fell for his brilliance. First, I fell for his ribcage through his shirt. To say, I'm sorry, I can't see this. I'm gonna get some light. First, I'm gonna start here. And I would know that day that brilliance made no difference. But first, I was mistaken. First, I fell for his brilliance. First, I fell for his ribcage through his shirt. To say first I was who I always was. To say I was always falling incredibly hard. To say I was always falling incredibly hard like women fall. To say I was used to feeling like women feel. To say I was used to being nothing other than a woman, which was a good thing, which was not a good thing. And my shrink would say, how in the world was it good to fall incredibly hard? I didn't always answer her. I was often pulling at threads at the edge of the chair. I was often staring into the plants and imagining a jungle. I was often tying my hair into knots and not untying the knots. To say I had my own things going on. To say I had my own messed up things I always had. So forgive me, he was my boyfriend's friend. Forgive me, he was crashing that night on our couch. Forgive me, my boyfriend was out of town. And there's not much to say about my boyfriend. Just he was hands down the kindest person I had ever met. Just he was hands down the kindest person anyone had ever met. Just I had no desire to cheat on him. To say I had no desire to cheat on him again. Which is not to say I had no desire. To say we had sat all night on the couch. To say there were important reasons to sit on the couch. To say he had bought important books that day, and so he was reading to me from one of the books. And so at first I wasn't listening, and so at first I was only looking around the room. And so I will tell you the color of his shirt, black, and I will tell you the color of the couch, red. Forgive me for falling for colors. Forgive me for falling for someone else's interpretation of colors. To say I was easily seduced. To say I was what one called messed up. To say I was a total fucking mess. To say I was lying back on the couch and then my legs were over his and then my eyes were slowly closing. And when I laughed at something, he stopped reading. And when he said, I love your teeth, I laughed again. This is not exactly what happened. To say perhaps I'm making this part up. To say he did stop reading, but he did not say he loved my teeth. To say he did stop reading, but he said my teeth were crooked. Which is to say, at the very least, he was looking at my mouth. Which is to say something about love, how back then I understood love. And so I opened my eyes, and so I saw him looking at me too hard. To say it was here that I felt a surge. To say it was here that everything shifted. To say it was here that I kicked him in his ribcage. And I was only joking when I kicked him. And he held up his book like a shield. And he was only joking when he held up the book. And my shrink would ask what I meant by shifted. And she would ask what I meant by surge. And she would ask why I kicked him in his ribcage. And she would ask what happened way back when. I didn't care about way back when. I'm sorry, the light. I didn't care about way back when. I didn't care about the mystery that was way back. And I would pull at the threads at the edge of the chair. I would tie my hair into knots. I would imagine diving into the jungle at the roots of the plants where I would start a whole new world. I imagined wearing leaves in that world. I imagined tying my hair up in twigs. I imagined I was gigantic, and he was less gigantic. And by he, I mean every he who ever cast a shadow over me. My way back when was just cliched. My way back when was the way back whens of other women in the world. To say there were lines in rooms and lines were crossed. To say there were rules in rooms and rules were broken. To say fill in the blanks for yourself. To say fill in the blanks with any words you choose. To say choose the words that happened in your way back. Imagine yourself on the couch. Imagine he's reading a story to you. Imagine the heat of his legs on yours. I can't imagine you'd behave as well as I did. I can't imagine you would go to the bedroom, shut the door, lie on the bed like I did. But the night was over and I thought I would just go to sleep. The night was dead and I thought I would dream dreams I would forget in the morning. And I whispered something superficial into my pillow. And I whispered something superficial into my arm. And I whispered something desperate into the universe. To say there are no good answers for what one does with desire. To say there is only this constant struggle. To say there is only this constant tugging. To say I wanted to walk back into the room. To say I wanted to go through his suitcase while he slept. To say I wanted to pull something from it. To say I wanted to pull out a shirt and keep it. I would have tried it on over mine. I would have tried it on under mine. To say it was just a superficial crush. And my boyfriend was hands down fucking perfect. And at some point later that week, he came back from out of town. And we were sitting on the couch and we were looking into each other's bored as shit eyes. And I said, listen to my boyfriend, and he listened. And I said something funny to my boyfriend, and he laughed. And I said, I could use a drink, and he got me a drink. And he said, I love you, etc. And he said, I mean it, etc. And I said something I'm sure I regretted. To say I'm sure I deserve to be punished. To say I'm sure I deserve to be crushed. And I wanted to be punished in the worst way. I wanted to be crushed beneath a hand. My God. I remember a detail from the story he read. To say I remember just one detail, a hot air balloon, the people in it going higher and higher, the people in it going way too high. And I should say he gave me the book to keep, or I should say I took it from his suitcase. And I should say I was looking for a shirt, or I was looking for a sock, or I was looking for his underwear. And this is not some kind of perversion. This is only love, how back then I did love. To say I'm very good at seduction. To say I could find a way to keep you awake all night. And I could have kept him awake all night. But on that night, I did not. Unlike the night I cheated on my boyfriend with my friend. Unlike the night I cheated on my boyfriend with his friend. Unlike all the nights way back when everything was just a spark and just a spark, fucking memory. And my shrink would ask why I behaved so well that night. I said I didn't know why. And she said to think, and I said I would think, but I didn't have to think. It was something about the hot air balloon. And she did not need to know I felt I was in one as he read. She did not need to know I felt twisted loose and shot into space. And I laughed as I was floating away. And when I laughed, he said my teeth were crooked. And I opened my eyes and was looking at his. And of course I felt a surge. And of course it was wrong to feel it. And of course the phone rang right then. And the phone just kept on ringing. And so I shifted my focus to the phone, fucking spark. I didn't mean to crush it. To say I didn't mean to crush him. To say I didn't want to answer the phone, but there was my boyfriend on the line, and there I was with nothing to say, and there he was with nothing. It's late here. It's late here too. What are you doing? Going to sleep. What are you doing? Going to sleep, etc., etc. And I hung up the phone, and where were we? He had been reading me a story, and he would look back at the page, and I thought he would read to me again. But instead, he would define a word he thought I didn't know, because he wanted to crush me back, because he did not know I was brilliant, because I did not know I was brilliant. But I knew the word. I knew all the words. And it was then I kicked him in his ribcage, and he stood and cast his shadow over me. And the night still could have gone either way. To say I still could have kept him awake. To say it was then I started thinking of seduction. No. It was years before I started thinking of seduction. No. It was at the exact moment of my own conception that I started thinking of seduction. No. It was at the exact moment of my own conception that I was completely seductive. So forgive me for being how I was. Forgive me for my performance of female. Forgive me for my messed up desire. I was just a girl and lines were crossed. I was just a girl and rules were broken. I was just a girl and blank happened once and blank happened twice and blank was said and blank was felt and blank could be dealt with eventually. But first I was mistaken. First I was lying on my bed and the phone rang again and I didn't answer. And I turned off the light and thought of sleep. And it was then I saw the keyhole lit up like some kind of too bright star. And fucking universe, fucking desire, I was falling again incredibly hard. And I thought of what you would think of me. And I thought of what you would say to me. And I thought of what you would say of me. And there was the moon scattered across the bedroom. And it was only me and the scattered moon. And it was hands down the biggest cliche. It was the biggest perversion, hands down. So punish me for getting out of bed. Punish me for walking to the door. Punish me for getting on my knees. Punish me for pressing my eye to the keyhole. And punish me for what I saw, and for what I did, and for what I did not, and for all that happened way back when, which was something, which was nothing, like I even fucking know.